Jai Shri Ram. Today it is Canto 63. Now I will read the summary first. Waking from slumber after a while and recalling his sinful deed which spelled death to him, Dashrath proceeds to tell Kaushalya how while he was Prince Regent of Ayodhya, he went out a hunting in the forest one day and heard during the last watch of the night the sound of a hermit boy filling his pitcher with water by submerging into Sharayu river. Mistaking the gurgling sound for the trumpeting of an elephant, Dashrath hit the boy with an arrow which dug deep into his body and mortally wounded him. On approaching his quarry, he discovered the fatal blunder and tendered his heartfelt apology to the hermit boy, who asked him to extract the arrow from his body and report the matter to his aged parents. The boy died immediately. The arrow was taken out of his body. So now we start the canto. Having woken from sleep after an hour or so, the said King Dashrath, whose mind was obscured through grief, now fell a prey to anxiety. Consequent to the banishment of Sri Ram and Lakshman, grief had seized the king, who vied in might and splendor with Indra, the ruler of gods, even as obscurity, which is attributed to the demon Rahu, seizes the sun at the time of solar eclipse. Recollecting the misdeeds and responsible for his present misfortune in the shape of separation from his sons and daughter-in-law, when Sri Ram had actually departed for the forest with his wife and Lakshman, Dashrath, king of Koshala, felt inclined to tell Kaushalya, the corners of whose eyes were noted for their dark color, all about it. On the sixth night, after Sri Ram had been sent into exile, the celebrated King Dashrath remembered at midnight the misdeed perpetrated by him. Recollecting his misdeed, the aforesaid monarch, who was stricken with grief caused by separation from his son, spoke as follows to Kaushalya, who was equally stricken with grief born of separation from her son. The doer surely reaps, O blessed lady, the fruit of his own deeds, corresponding to the nature, good or evil, of that which he does, O gracious one. He who does not reckon while undertaking actions the relative importance of their fruits as well as the advantages or disadvantages accruing from them is surely dubbed as a fool. Anyone who, cutting down a whole mango grove because of its unattractive and tiny blossoms, nourishes a cluster of palasa tree, expecting large and luscious fruits on seeing their charming and big flowers, repents at the time of their fruition. Indeed, like the man who nourishes a Kimisuka tree, he who embarks on action alone, not minding the consequences, is sure to repent when the action bears fruit. Cutting down a mango grove, I have accordingly watered palasha trees and sending away Ram to the forest at a time when the said mango grove was going to bear fruit, I repent, a fool that I am. The sin which I am going to describe now was perpetrated by me, O Kaushalya, while I was yet a prince wielding a bow and arrows and had won the title of a prince expert in hitting an invisible mark with the help of sound made by it. This disaster, which was earned by myself, has been reaped by me, O godly lady, in the same way as poison may be swallowed by a child through excessive folly. Even as a common man would be deluded by the charming red blossoms of a palash tree, I misled to think that it would yield equally large and delicious fruits, so it was never suspected by me that the dexterity acquired by me in hitting an invisible mark with the help of its sound would yield such a disastrous result. You were not married with me till then, O pious lady, and I was only Prince Regent at that time. Then set in the monsoon, which keenly enhanced my passion for hunting. Sucking the moisture of the earth and scorching the world with its ray, the sun had begun to course through the southern water haunted by spirits and therefore exciting fear. Clouds laden with moisture appeared in the sky and the heat vanished all of a sudden. Frogs like the Kataka birds and peacocks all rejoiced in consequence. Birds which had the upper part of their wings drenched and which therefore looked as though bathed could reach with difficulty the trees on which they had nestled and whose ends were shaken by rain and the winds. Sorry. Covered by the rainwater already fallen and still repeatedly falling on it. Sorry. The mountain with elephants in rut looked like waveless oceans and a drenched mountain. Please excuse me. I'm so sorry. Cascades carrying transparent waters ran in a serpentine course, assuming a white, ruddy, and ashy color on the way due to contact with mountain minerals of those colors. Having made up my mind to take some exercise by way of hunting, and with my senses uncontrolled, I drove at that most agreeable period in a chariot to the river Shariyu, equipped with a bow and arrows, and wishing to hunt at night a wild buffalo, an elephant, or any other beast of prey or deer, accidentally arrived at some ford in the river. Presently, in the darkness, I, for my part, heard the sound of a pitcher being filled with water of the river, resembling the sound of a trumpeting elephant, at a place which was not before my eyes. Taking out from my quiver an effulgent arrow resembling a snake in its deadly effect, I then discharged it in the direction of the sound in the hope of hitting the mark as I wished to bag the elephant after killing it. In the quarter where I hurled my sharp arrow, resembling a snake in its deadly effect, there emerged in the dawn the clear wail of a dweller in the forest dropping down in water, his vital part tormented with pain caused by the arrow. On his having dropped down to the ground, issued forth on that very spot a human voice saying, "How could a weapon descend on any ascetic like myself? Who can have no enemy?" I came at the close of night to this exceedingly lonely river bank with the intention of drawing water. By whom have I been hit with an arrow? Or to whom could offense have been given by me, a seer who has foresworn every form of violence and who was living in a forest on the produce of the forest? How can the killing by means of an weapon of an ascetic like me, wearing a mass of matted hair on his head and clad in the bark of trees and deer skin, be enjoined by scriptures? Who can have any interest in killing me, or what offense has been given by me to the man who has hit me with an arrow? In this way, a futile act has been done by him, and an act which was attained with evil consequences alone. Nowhere will anyone admire him any more than one would admire a man seeking the bed of his preceptor's wife. I do not grieve for this loss of my life so much as for the fate of my father and mother, both on my expiry. By what means of subsistence will this aged couple, maintained for long by me, support themselves when I have met my end? My aged parents, as well as myself, stand killed with a single arrow. By what ignorant fool of an uncontrolled mind have we all been done to death? The bow with an arrow which I held in my hands at the moment dropped from my hands to the ground, distressed as I was to hear that plaintive cry, and sought only to do what was right. Hearing the piteous lament of the seer who was wailing during the close of the night, I lost my consciousness again and again. utterly confounded as I was due to the outburst of grief. Reaching the place where he lay, distressed in mind and extremely sad at heart as I was, I beheld the ascetic lying on the bank of the Sharayu, struck with an arrow and pierced with its point, the mass of matted hair on his head put out of order, the water of his pitcher run out, and his limbs besmeared with dust and blood. Staring at me, who stood alarmed and sick in mind, with his bloodshot eyes as if going to consume me with his glory of austerity, he addressed the following harsh words to me. What wrong was done by me to you, O king, living as I did in the forest, that while intending to take water for my parents, I was hit by you? On my being hit in the vital part with a single arrow, my blind and aged mother and father both have been virtually killed. Feeble, blind, and thirsty, they must be anxiously waiting for me and will be cherishing since long the hope of getting water placed in me and enduring their painful thrust. Surely ascesis or learning has not yet borne fruit in my case or in the case of my father, for my father does not know anything about myself having fallen mortally wounded and lying on the ground. Even if he knew, what could he do, feeble and unable as he is to move, and in this way is incapable of protecting me as any tree is incapable of protecting a neighboring tree which is going to be rent asunder. Seeking the presence of my father, O scion of Raghu, speak you alone to him speedily about me. If you take courage in both hands and confess your guilt before him, I am sure he will not burn you in his wrath as a sullen fire would consume a forest. Here is the track by which my father's hermitage can be reached. Approaching him, seeking his forgiveness, lest he should get enraged and execrate you. Render me free from pain by extracting the shaft from my body. O king, since your sharp pointed arrow torments my vital parts in the same way as a river current corrodes a high sandy bank. While I was going to extract the arrow from his body, the following thought entered my mind. With the arrow still rankling in his body, the hermit boy will continue to suffer, even though he will survive, while he will surely expire the moment the shaft is removed from his body. That sage of a hermit immediately perceived my anxiety, distressed, miserable, and stricken with grief as I was. The hermit boy, who knew the essence of the scriptures, spoke with difficulty as follows to me, who was feeling perplexed in mind, though getting faint and motionless with my eyes turned round. Since I have approached my end, I am trying to compose my mind, restraining my grief by recourse to firmness. Let agony caused by the thought of your having killed a Brahman be driven away from your heart. I am not a Brahman, O king, hence let there be no anguish in your mind on that score. I was procreated by a Vaishya through a Sudra woman, O ruler of the foremost of men. While he was speaking, as aforesaid, with difficulty, his vital part having been smitten with the arrow, and was now rolling on the ground, now tossing about, now quivering, and now fainting, I took out that arrow from his body, looking dismayed at me. The boy, whose only wealth was his asceticism, gave up the ghost. I felt extremely sad, O blessed lady, to behold him sighing again and again after speaking out his mind with difficulty, his vital part having been injured, and then lying dead on the bank of the Sharayu, drenched all over his body with water. Thus ends Canto 63 in the Ayodhya Kand of the glorious Ramayana of Valmiki, the work of a Rishi and the oldest epic. Jai Shri Ram.